Increasing your landing page's conversion rate is single-handedly the highest leverage lever that you can pull inside your e-commerce business and your health and wellness brand to scale to 8 figures and actually net some decent profit, right? And if you're not improving your conversion rates, like you're just leaving money on the table. And I actually got an analogy for this. So let's imagine that 20 darts cost you $100, and every single time you hit the bullseye, you make a sale, right? Now, if you hit the board on average roughly once per 20 throws, then you're averaging one sale per 20 darts, or that means you're averaging one sale per $100 spent, right? Because remember, 20 darts cost you $100. Now, in the second scenario, this scenario here, person B, he hits the board on average 3 times per 20 throws. And that means he averages 3 sales per 20 darts. Or you can say that he averages 3 sales per $100 that he spends, right? And that is simply the power of increasing your conversion rate. If you can manage to increase your conversion rate, you're simply just going to make much more money from the same amount of money that you're already spending on ads, right? And that is so important. It's imperative when you are at 7 figures trying to scale to 8 figures, because every single dollar counts, right? Every single dollar that you can put forward testing more, right? The more money you're going to make, because you're going to be able to test more volume, you're going to be able to test more diversity, test more creatives, right? Test more landing pages, you're going to be able to test everything, right? But that all requires dollars. And if you don't have dollars, if you don't have that net profit coming in, if you don't have those dollars available to spend and test, then you're not going to make any money, right? Now, you can literally make 3 times more sales with your business just by increasing the conversion rate, and that's without spending a single dollar more in ads, right? And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this video, and I'm going to give you a specific template that you can use for your brand in order to 3x your sales, right? Now, before we go on, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alexander Photiou, and I'm on a mission to help 1,000 supplement brand owners and health and wellness brand owners scale to $1 million per month by helping them build systems that help them attract new customers and extract more profit from those customers, right? And the first thing I want to talk about here is, like, can a template actually produce good conversion rates, right? Because there's a big thing, like, can templates produce good conversion rates? Lots of people have used templates, right? And the thing is, they don't. Templates do not produce good conversion rates because there is no single template that works for every single brand, right? You can't just take AG1's landing page and slap your product or logo on there and expect an 8% conversion rate. That's not how it works, right? Because every single brand is different. What you can do, though, is you can create a template for your own brand, your own products, right? And that can consistently churn out 5 to 8% conversion rate landing pages if the template is good and works for your brand and with your audience, right? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically show you how you can create your own template, right? Quick disclaimer, I'm not going to give you a template, right? I'm not going to give you a cut and dry template which you can go ahead and plug into your business, because, as I said, those don't exist, right? I'll be doing you more harm than good if I was to just give you a template, say, yeah, use this, because that's not how it works, right? I'm going to show you how you can create your own templates so you can quickly and literally systematically create your own landing pages to test multiple different variants of creatives, because, as you know, congruency is really important. If you can keep the landing page congruent with the ad, you're more likely to make sales, right? So this is basically the whole point of frameworks. Like, before I carry on, the whole point of frameworks is so that you can systemize the landing page creation. It's so that you can speed up the whole process, and it's so that you can detach yourself from the landing page creation aspect of the business, and so that you can actually go ahead and churn them out literally like this, right? So that's the whole premise of this, right? And you can only do this through testing. Like, there's no other way. You must test, and you must keep these 6 things in mind when you're testing. So it's all about volume, it's all about diversity, it's all about metrics, it's all about systems, it's all about petri dish, and it's all about heuristics. You're probably thinking, Alex, what on earth are you talking about, right? I'm going to go through each of these points right now, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So number 1, volume, right? This is easy to understand. You need to test a whole lot, right? And that's more than you think. So you need to take whatever number of landing pages that you think you should test weekly, then you need to 10x that. So if you think you should be testing 10 landing pages per week, go ahead and test 100, right? And then add an extra 25% on top of that, and you're probably somewhere around where you should be, right? I'm telling you, volume is the most important thing, right? If you don't have volume, there's no point in testing, because you're just not testing, right? It's like A/B split testing, but you're not going to A/B split test your way to success. You need to scientifically test your way to success, and this is how you do it, through volume, right? Second thing is diversity. So again, this is really easy to understand. You have to be creative, and you have to take inspiration from randomness, right? So an easy exercise that I like to do is I just like to look around myself. I like to take inspiration from my environment and just incorporate that into my stimuli. The stimuli is the marketing message, by the way, if you're new to this channel, right? But an example of this exercise is, for example, while I was writing this Miro board, I have a whiteboard right next to me. Actually, it's right here. I have a whiteboard next to me, and perhaps I could create a VSL on the landing page that replaces the listicle that I would have initially used, and see if that increases the click-through rate to the actual PDP, right? Another example is, I'm currently reading Discourses by Epictetus, and if I was to turn to page 273, the first sentence would say, You should be especially careful when associating with former friends not to sink to their level, right? If you don't know who Epictetus is, I definitely recommend you go ahead and read him, but we're sticking to this video, right? I would use that as an angle to test, right? You need to take inspiration from randomness. Like, literally, that's how you can be so creative. You can literally outsmart and out creative and be out, you can outthink your competition just by taking inspiration from randomness, right? Now, 3, metrics. So you must track 2 types of metrics. Most people track metrics completely wrong, right? First one is macro conversion metrics, and the second one is micro sub conversion metrics. And examples of hard conversion metrics are things like your ROAS, your AOV, your customer acquisition cost, your revenue per visitor, etc., etc. These are the macro metrics which show you how the entire customer acquisition machine is working. Like, you think about the entire customer acquisition machine, how it works, how you measure the input to output ratio, right? And examples of micro sub conversion metrics are add to cart to checkout ratio. So out of the people who go ahead and add to cart, how many of them are checking out, right? And this tells you, actually, let me go through the rest of the examples. So you have add to cart to checkout ratio, you have your scroll depth percentage, and you have your subscription take percentage, right? If you're running a subscription offer, which you definitely should be in 2026, right? But all of these things, they track like where is the bottleneck in your system. So you have your macro system, but in between that macro system, you have little micro systems that make up the whole macro system, right? And that is exactly how you spot these bottlenecks. Because if you can see the bottleneck, if you can see one sub conversion metric is lacking and it's underneath KPI, then you know that sub conversion metric, that sub conversion system is lacking, and that is the thing that's putting the whole system at the lowest level. Because your system effectively runs as well as the worst performing subsystem, right? If your add to cart to checkout ratio is bad, doesn't matter how many people you get adding to cart, you're still going to be unprofitable, right? And it's the same thing. Like if people aren't scrolling through your landing page, like of course there are nuances to this. Like you could have CT at the top. Like I understand that you can measure that, but in general, if people aren't scrolling on your landing page, and they're not reading your copy or they're not going through your PDP, right? Like that is a bottleneck, and you can see that by measuring the sub conversion metrics. And this is really, really important. Micrometrics will show you where the bottlenecks lay. Like if you're stuck at a 3% conversion rate and you cannot get it up, the micrometrics will show you that your add to cart to checkout ratio is where the bottleneck is. And that's just an example. There's multiple different examples that I can flesh out, right? Number 4 is like, this flows from the last point about metrics, but this is systems. You need to be able to think systems. And you like everything is a system. You really need to get that. Everything is a system. You have input, you have processes, you have output, and you have feedback, usually in the form of metrics, right? So example is, like this is for the macro system, right? So you have visitors, that's your input, people coming and landing on your landing page, right? Then you have a listicle. Your listicle is the stimuli, it's the process, right? It's the method of which your stimuli is being deployed, right? That is the listicle, that's the processes, right? Then you have interested prospects as the output, right? So if somebody goes to your listicle, that means on average, they're going to be interested. They're going to be interested prospects. And you're going to get feedback from that system in the form of metrics. So your scroll depth percentage, your click-through ratio, right? That is why you need to think in systems, because once you start thinking in systems, then you can start measuring these micro and sub conversion rates, and you can start comparing them to your macro North Star KPIs, right? This is so important. This is what the 8-figure brands and the 9-figure brands are doing so well, and it's the thing that holds 7-figure brands owners back, right? They don't track their metrics diligently enough, right? Another example, like you can go as granular as you want with this, right? And the more granular you go, the better. There is a point of diminishing returns. Like you can only go so granular, but you can actually track every single part of the system. But you should track as much of it as you can. And one granular example is like, okay, you have your add to cart. That's the input, people who add to cart. Then your process is a checkout page, right? So people land on your checkout page. And then your output is sales, right? So out of the people who add to cart, how many sales do you make, right? And that's your add to cart to checkout ratio, right? And there's probably going to be another few metrics that that you get back from that. But in general, this is a very, very effective exercise, because like when you're diagnosing why something works or why something doesn't work, you just look at the sub-conversion metrics. And if you've been tracking them diligently enough and religiously enough, you will know what to focus on and you will know what the bottleneck is, right? 5th thing is Petri dish. So when you're testing, you're going to get very, very confident. And it's good to be confident, but it's also bad if you're too confident. Like it's good to be scared, but it's bad to be too scared, right? Anything taken to its extreme isn't very good. And it's imperative to your success that you do not fuck with the system that works, right? You cannot mess with a system that works. And here's what your testing should look like. Because I guarantee, if you're confident and something doesn't work the way you want it to, you're going to get irrational and you're going to start changing it. This is what every single e-commerce brand owner that's stuck at 7 figures does, right? Your testing workflow should look like this. You have a winning landing page, right? This is your best performing landing page that you've got. And it's at a 2.8% conversion rate. You do not mess with this. You don't, because it's your winning landing page. It's your best performing landing page. You do not touch it. You keep it there. You keep most of the traffic flowing to that landing page, right? I cannot stress this enough. You let it run. You sit on your hands, right? You do not touch that landing page. Instead, what you do is you send 90% of the traffic to the winning landing page, right? With the one with a 2.8% conversion rate. And you send 10% to a Petri dish landing page, right? I'm not sure if you guys did any science experiments in school, but when I was in school, what we did was we were doing science experiments and we were doing things in Petri dishes to keep every single bacteria separate to another array of bacteria, right? Every single species of bacteria had its own Petri dish where we would test things. And that is exactly what you are doing here. You are testing things separate. You keep your winner and you test on the side with a small volume until you get statistical significance. And you know that this landing page outperforms your old winning one, right? And that's what you're going to do is from metrics, right? That's why I'm doing this in this linear order. That's why I went from metrics to systems to Petri dish testing, right? And if the Petri dish landing page has a higher conversion rate than the winning landing page, that can now be considered a winner. And you can now start to make iterations in it. And I'll cover that in a moment, how you can make iterations on winners. And if the Petri dish landing page has a lower conversion rate than the winning landing page, that can now be considered a loser. And you can now find the key differences in key variables to test and validate why that is a loser. And I'll also cover that in just a moment, right? But this is so important to understand. It's so important to understand. You do not buck with the winning landing page. You do not touch it. You sit on your hands, right? Sixth thing. This is the most important part, right? This is by far the most important part. You can take everything I know about everything else away. If I had this sixth most important part, I would still find a way to make the other parts work because everything stems from this. Every single piece of marketing message that you write stems from 6. Your heuristics. The heuristics that you know. Are you aware of the human biases and human cognitive heuristics, right? The human brain, as you know, is still hardwired as if we were living in caves fighting off saber-toothed tigers and, you know, these flying dinosaurs and velociraptors, right? Therefore, the brain has shortcuts it uses to make decisions fast. These shortcuts are called heuristics, and it's imperative to your success that you study them relentlessly, right? A common one that people already know of are social proof, right? Everybody knows that social proof, you must do social proof, you must do social proof. But why? Why should we use social proof? Well, it's because of these heuristics. The human brain has a shortcut where if it sees other people doing something, then they are more likely to go ahead and do it, right? That simply because in the old days, if someone was screaming and running away from a certain area, it would mostly likely make sense for you to go ahead and run in that direction with them, because there's obviously something bad coming from that direction, right? So that is why heuristics exist. And there are so many more than social proof, by the way. It's like 300 plus. There's probably thousands actually. But I've got a resource I'm going to show you in a minute that has like 300 of them where you can just, it's all conglomerated together and you can just go ahead and study them. But every single time you sit down to write any piece of copy or design anything or create anything that your audience is going to see, you must do it with keeping heuristics in mind, right? Every single time you sit down to analyze key variables in a part of your system and stimuli, you must do it whilst keeping heuristics in mind, because everything works from the heuristics. You must make your prospects irrational, right? You must almost trick them. Now, I don't have a problem with tricking people into buying a product if the product is good. If your product is bad, please do not use this, right? But if your product is good and you know that you are actually serving human mankind with your product and it's actually a good product, go ahead, use this. Use it to the best of your ability, make people irrational, trick people into buying your product if they need it, right? And eventually you will find the heuristics that work best with your audience. Every single market responds differently to different heuristics, and you should keep track of them in a document, right? I cannot stress this enough, but nonetheless, I'm going to show you this document. Prepare to have your mind blown, right? This is so cool. I take no credit for designing this thing. I take no credit. I don't know who designed this thing. I don't know. I have no clue. But this thing, like, if you zoom in, you can basically see this is the cognitive bias codex, right? And these are all the shortcuts that your brain uses to make decisions, right? So let's say you need someone to act fast, right? You need someone to act fast. Well, this is the part of the brain that gets people to act fast. These are heuristics that get people to act fast. So for example, if I just click on a random one, like if I come here and let's Let's see the decoy effect, right? Decoy effect. So this one in marketing, the decoy effect or attraction effect or asymmetric dominance effect, right? I'm not going to go through this, but basically you can see, and like what you do, what I like to do is I literally just go ahead here, and I just read through this. I'll read through this. I'll click random ones and I'll just read through them, and I'll learn as much as I can. And for example, like if I click on a random one, let's say this one, sunk cost fallacy, like you just stop reading and then you go, okay, well, what is this? Now you click on this, and that's how you open a loop and a rabbit hole of learning. And obviously, the more you know, the more you earn, right? As long as you put that knowledge to action. But I highly recommend you go ahead and look at this. I'm going to link the description down below. It's completely free. You don't have to pay for it or anything. I'm not even going to ask you email. Completely free. But yeah, definitely want to go ahead and use that. And like I said, something I like to do is literally just click on one randomly. Like I just like to click on one random one, completely random. I'm not even looking. I'll just like click on one. I'll go ahead, go through it and see how I can implement that in my stimuli, right? And again, these are all tests. You implement these as key variables, right? Other key principles to keep in mind when you're testing different stimuli: keep a track of data religiously. Metrics, KPIs, and data are your life now. You live and breathe data, right? Those things are going to determine if you scale to 8 figures or not, right? The more diligently you track, the more money you make, and the more profit you will generate. It's simple. Show me someone who tracks their data religiously, and I will show you an 8-figure brand owner. Show me someone who doesn't track data religiously and attributes it correctly, I'll show you a failure, right? Next thing, you must be rational. Because if you're irrational, you're just going to stop fucking around with the system and you're not going to let it run. When an experiment is running, you do not fuck with it. Do you think that if a scientist starts fucking with an experiment when they see it doesn't work? No. You must decide on the test, start the test, then sit on your hands and do absolutely nothing whilst it runs. And you just let the test run. That's it. Once the test is running, you sit on your hands until you have the data that you need in order to make a statistical significant decision. Right? Sample size. You need a decent size of input into the system to process so that you can effectively measure the output through metric. Right? The bigger the sample size, the better. You just need a fair number of people going through that piece of stimuli in order to be able to test it. Right? So let's say, for example, you're testing headlines. Right? And you know that the reason you're testing headlines is because you want to increase the scroll depth. You have a good amount of visitors coming onto your landing page. So that is the sample size that you need. You need visitors, right? So you must fix the beginning of the systems first. You get visitors coming in. Now you start measuring the scroll depth, right? That's a sub-conversion metric. It's a micro metric that you must be tracking. If you remember what we were speaking about here, right? You're measuring your scroll depth. Your scroll depth will have key components, key variables that influence that sub-conversion metric, right? And let's say scroll depth, one of the key variables that influence that sub-conversion metric. God, that's a mouthful. One of the key variables that influence that sub-conversion metric is your headline, right? So you need enough people to see your headline in order for you to actually test, right? And latency, things take time to work. It may take multiple touch points, but you could find a winning landing page if you just gave it enough time. Like most people, they actually don't have bad landing pages. Like they're not testing bad landing pages. They just don't give it time. They don't test it properly. You need to give things time to work because people need multiple touch points. People need to see the landing page multiple times, right? All these things you have to take into account. It's like in the environment that you live in is human nature. You cannot change human nature. You can only adapt to it, right? And you need to give things time to marinate. And I've actually gone ahead and outlined the scientific process that I personally follow when creating new stimuli. And this isn't just for landing pages. This is for ads. This is for post-purchase funnels, for emails, etc. It's for everything. Absolutely everything that you want to test, you can use this formula, right? So step one, you formulate a hypothesis, right? So you define the key variables in that stimulus that you're going to be testing. So for example, let's say you're creating a landing page, right? You want to define the key variables at every single part of the sub-conversion metric, right? You want to define all of the key variables. You want to define all the metrics and KPIs that you are going to use to track all those key variables, right? You want to establish a sample size of how many people are going to be going through that system in order for you to basically say, okay, enough people have gone through this. Now, a decision. You also need to establish the latency time frame, right? So you need to know how long you're going to be running this test for, right? You need to make the test airtight. So you need to think about what could possibly go wrong during this experiment and then make sure that it doesn't go wrong, right? You need to make it airtight. You also need to create your version X variables. So what I mean by this is we test things as version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, all the way up to like version 1642, right? It's just versions, right? Now, what I mean by create a version X variables is, for example, let's say you're creating a PDP. All of your variables, all of the key variables, everything, all of the stimuli that's on there, all the catalog photos, your pricing, your bundles, the way that you're structuring the landing page itself, you need to create the version X variables because those are all variables, and that is version X. If it's your first time doing it, that's version 1, and you need to establish the constants, right? So this is at the beginning. This is when you first start testing, right? You establish the constants, which at the beginning is going to be absolutely everything, right? Everything is a constant. Now, step 2, you test the hypothesis. So this goes back to what I was saying. You run a test, you sit in your hands, you do nothing, and then you log the data religiously. Let me actually put this here. Religiously. It's so important. It's so imperative to your success that you log the data so well. Because if you're not logging the data, you're going to have inaccurate data. You're not going to be able to make decisions on data, right? Data does not lie, right? Step 3 is observe results. So you need to verify the data. You need to literally go through and make sure that the data that you logged is correct. And you need to determine the success. So how successful was it? It's not, was it successful? Was it not successful? Yes or no? It's not that. It's not binary. It's not yes, no. It's how successful or how not successful, right? And the way you do this is just like, look at your KPIs, look at your contribution margin and see how many units you need to sell in order to be profitable. And see if you were profitable. See if you were in KPI. See if you hit your OKRs. If you hit everything, if you hit your KPIs, you hit everything, that means that is now a winning version, right? That's a winning version, and now you know the benchmark KPI that you need to iterate on, right? And iterating on hypothesis, so this is where it really gets really interesting. So you redefine the key variables on whatever you want to test. You pick the needle mover variable, so what you think is going to move the needle the most. Now, this is really important. You pick one. You pick only one variable. I cannot stress this enough again. You pick one variable. One variable. I'm repeating myself a lot because this is so important. You do not test multiple things at once. You test one thing at a time. One thing, right? To give you an example, right? Let's say if I pull up a landing page here. If I pull up this, let's say I wanted to test this landing page, right? I would define like, okay, I want to improve the scroll depth. I want to try to improve the amount of people who are scrolling down on my landing page, right? So I would first sit here and I would think, okay, what are the key variables? What are the key variables? Bear in mind, this is just a home page. You wouldn't actually do this on your home. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't do this on a home page. It's not that high leverage. I would do it on the page that you're actively running ads to. But just for the sake of this example, I'm going to do it on the home page. So what I would do is I would sit here and I'll think, okay, what are the key variables here that I can change in order to go ahead and influence the scroll depth, right? So I know that the landing page and the I know that the headline and the subheadline are going to be massive here, right? These are going to be massive. These things are key variables. So is this image, right? The stimuli here, the stimuli that you see here is really important. Now, perhaps I would test getting rid of this header, right? And just having the landing page start here and have an arrow going down. That could be another key variable that you could introduce, right? It's almost like a CTA, right? Again, I'm not sure if this would work. You don't know until you test, right? And this is the whole thing. You need to this is why I said you need to take inspiration from randomness. Just be completely random because it's the things that you don't expect to work that end up working, right? So yeah, this is how you do it. You go ahead and you figure out like, okay, what are the key variables? And then you change it. And you change one key variable at a time. So if I wanted to increase the scroll depth and I thought that this was a needle mover variable, the headline, I'll go ahead and change the headline only. I would only change the headline. The rest of it are constants, right? So that's why here you recognize the new constants. So everything apart from what you are changing is a constant. The one thing that you are changing, right? Everything apart from the one thing that you are changing is a constant, right? Then you go ahead and pick the modification level. So this is based on like how successful was your previous hypothesis. So if your previous hypothesis was very close to your goal KPI, then you only really need to make slight adjustments, right? You only really need to make slight adjustments on your initial hypothesis on your version 1, right? Or your version X to create version 2, right? That's the thing. It's like, if you are close to KPI, you test slightly. If you are moderately far away from your KPI, your goal KPI, then you test moderately. If you are very far away, then you go ahead and you test like something completely different. And one thing that I will say is that if you are completely off, like let's say your goal conversion rate is 5% and you're getting a 0.2% conversion rate, I would recommend just scrapping the whole thing and starting your new version X variable, just creating a completely new hypothesis, scrapping everything, because at that point it's like you know that nothing works. And I'll actually give you a big piece of advice here. If you see something that doesn't work and works completely terribly, the single best thing that you can do, this is really a hack, like find what doesn't work and then just invert it, right? Just invert it. So if I found out that this doesn't work, you have nutrients gaps, Crohn's fills them, right? If I found out this doesn't work and this image doesn't work and this CTA doesn't work, I would just go ahead and invert everything. I'll go ahead and invert everything. Literally, turn everything on its opposite, right? That's how you test. And then once you go ahead and modify the needle mover accordingly, so you go ahead and go back to our example, I wanted to change the headline. Once I change it, right, and I modify it according to the modification level, I go ahead and repeat step 1, right? It's literally that simple. I promise you, if you do all of this, you'll scale. It's literally impossible to fail if you do this. Because if you do this often enough, you track your data religiously, you do nothing whilst the test is running, and you consistently literally just follow this step by step, I promise you, you're going to find a template that works for your brand, and it's going to be you're going to be so profitable because nobody will understand why you've done what you've done, right? Most people are out there trying to find templates that other brands have used. They're copying top players, but the thing is, those top players have their own templates that work the best with their customers. They came up with their landing pages, their templates on their own. That's why they are 9-figure brands. That's why AG1, Gruns, and Prime, IM8, and Ritual, they are all 9-figure brands. And the reason for that is because they went ahead and fought for themselves. And that's what you need to do. You need to think for yourself and create your own version X variables. And therefore, that's going to help you come up with a template that you can consistently use to churn out systematically new landing pages. So important. So yeah, that's that. And by the way, if you are trying to scale your supplement brand or your health and wellness brand, and you're between $250,000 and $600,000 per month in revenue, and you just can't for the life of you figure out how you go ahead and scale to those 7-figure months, then click the first link in the description. Look, I'm not gonna try and sell you anything. Yeah, it is a funnel. It's a video. It contains a video that goes over the 3 most vital pillars for scaling any e-commerce brand to 7-figure months. But yeah, it is a funnel, and at the end, I am gonna try and get you to book a call, and that's so that I can sell you my paid services. But it's click on the link if you want. Don't click on it. I don't really care. It's up to you. I think that you would like it, but if not, don't worry. I don't really care. Be my guest. But yeah, look, if you like the video, by the way, prove it to me by liking the video. I would really appreciate that. And if you've got any other questions, comment them down below and subscribe so that you can see when I answer your questions, right? And that's also because I would really appreciate it because it helps me a ton. And it's also because I post a bunch of content going over 8-figure brand level stuff, right? But yeah, thank you again for sticking with me to the end. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you make a ton of money and make a bunch of profit and you scale.